Hello and welcome to The First Step. My name is Gary, and this video marks my first actual guided illustration walkthrough for 2022. So, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. I hope you find this helpful in some way. I've gotten a few questions regarding the name of this channel and as to why I chose it. Turns out there are quite a few channels on YouTube called The First Step, but I had initially chosen this name to record my progress as an aspiring author of my first YA novel, shameless plug, and it sort of transitioned into me sharing how I create illustrations and concept art for myself and the entertainment industry. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with blah, 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 blah. You get it. But we're all taking first steps in our lives, especially since the start of the pandemic. So if you're taking your first step into art, or if you're a veteran of the art industry and just want to glean some new ideas, hopefully you can find them here. As I said, I'm an aspiring author illustrator. I'll leave a link to my first book, I didn't say that right, down below. It's not for sale quite yet, but there's a ton of art on the site, and this is hopefully a year for getting things done, so I will try to work my ass off to make that happen. I also work as a concept artist, illustrator, voice actor, baker, and a guy who never gets enough sleep, so shoot me any questions you have about any of those things in the comments below. Now enough jibber jabber, on with the walkthrough. Today we are taking a look at the process for my most recent illustration. I'm turning this into this. So just to start off, there's technically nothing wrong with this. It conveys all the information and attitude of the character I had in my head. But where it falls short is that it doesn't match the style of the rest of the illustrations for my book. So I jump into Procreate to make that happen. Now, for those of you not familiar with Procreate, it's an artist app that you can use on the iPad. It shares a lot of the same features as Photoshop without all of the fluff. It's pretty streamlined, easy to understand, even with only a base understanding of similar programs. But now I'm just starting to ramble, so let's get on with the walkthrough. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring the original piece into Procreate, reduce the opacity, create a new layer on top of that, and then use my shading graphite brush, really tiny, to trace over the original piece. I'm saving time doing that because I don't want to have to redraw the entire thing from scratch. I've already got a good base there, and it'll be easy for me to manipulate that while I move forward. I'm starting to reposition a few things here, like the hand holding the hammer, trying to get the anatomy right and make the fingers a little bit more interesting. I'm also going to be erasing the original legs and then redesigning them so that they're a bit more in perspective, and they help create a little bit more attitude for the character. Before both his feet were pointed forward, he looked a little awkward standing there, so now I want him to feel a little bit stronger, more balanced, and I'll keep making these changes as the piece progresses. I'll erase small parts here, or I'll just change things here and there just to give more attitude and character to the original character. The next step I take is to fill in the line art, so I'll create a new layer underneath that and paint in with a basic gray, a flat color, just so I can get rid of all of the white behind it. And then I start to block in tones to start to pull out details from the original piece. I'm not trying to be too precious with this. Right now I'm just slapping in gray tones to help block out different areas. Once I have all that blocked in, I'll throw a multiply layer over everything so I can start to darken up the whole image. You'll notice that I put a big circle in the background, and that'll come into play later on, and I'll talk about that when it comes up. But right now I'm just building up shapes, starting with bigger shapes and then working my way down into smaller shapes, still working underneath the original line art. As I said earlier, I will continue to make adjustments to the character. As you can see, I've corrected the position of the hammer and the arm, holding it, as well as his legs, the thickness of his belt, the shape of his ear that's closest to the viewer. All of these things help to create a stronger character and help to tell his story. I keep going back and forth on the design for the hammer because it is annoying. He's a forge master in my story, and his hammer is very important. It's part of who he is. And so that needs to be clear in the illustration. So I do a lot of back and forth with the design on that, but eventually I'll land on something that I'm pretty happy with. So now the dark circle comes into play. Earlier I repositioned the character so he's a little bit more centered on the circle, and then I'm using a white brush on top of the main layer so that I can create an edge light to the figure. And this helps to pull out forms that are hidden in shadow and just creates a little bit more depth to the character. So that's a little trick that you can use, and it's super easy and lots of fun. And the last few minutes of this video are spent doing all the nitty-gritty details, finishing off small areas that are in light. You'll notice there's a big difference between, well, I don't know if it's a big difference. There's a difference between the original drawing and the final piece where I didn't include the tattoos on his arms. And I bounced the idea back and forth, but I decided that there was so much detail in the lining on his clothes and in the hammer itself that I needed areas for a viewer's eyes to rest. I'm pretty happy with the final piece. The perspective's not completely correct. There are some things that I had in my head that I couldn't really convey convincingly enough, so I just omitted them. But I think it's a really good piece for my book, and I'm very happy that I was able to share that with you. If anybody has any questions about Procreate, about illustration, about concept art, about voiceover, about blah, 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 the universe, whatever you want to ask, shoot me a comment down below. I'm happy to answer, and I'm happy to help. Thank you all so much for tuning in, for taking time out of your busy day, and for choosing to click on this video in the first place. Feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. The links are in the description below. Because of my hectic schedule, I don't know when I'll be uploading another walkthrough like this, but I do update frequently on IG and Twitter, so you can get the lowdown on all of my projects as well as where I'm at in my author's journey. Have a fantastic day, and be sure to check out the other videos on my channel for more tips, tricks, and fantasy art.